now that we are going towards the end of the workshop, we'll just try to reflect a bit on now all these things you learned here this week. Hopefully you learned a lot. We know it's been quite intense. There's been a lot of things going on. You have worked really hard with the tutorials, and not many of you, I think, reach actually all the way to the end of them. I know it's quite a lot, and I think with these tutorials, it's really good to take your time to understand what you're doing rather than going fast through them. So this week, what we really have tried is to bring people together, have a very intense program where you get exposed to really a lot of the things we could do with EEG, from the background to analysis. So starting with the basic, what is EEG, how does it work, how do we design experiments basically from the beginning, what is the EEG equipment, you've been playing around with the different systems that Robert brought here, how are we doing EEG recordings, looking at different ways to analyze the data and so on. But this is only the beginning. This is kind of now you are being launched into space. So today and tomorrow we will kind of depart, and then after that you will be kind of alone floating out in space with your own research questions and your own EEG projects going on. And as soon as you come back home and you start working on your things, you will have a lot of questions. That's just how these things are. So once you start to dive into the details of your own experiment, you will notice some detail. How should I do these kind of things? The EEG systems that you either are planning on getting or that you have already at your departments, like how exactly do they work? How can I get the most out of them? How should I do the recordings in the most optimal fashion, both with the EEG system and in the terms of the patients and design? How should you analyze it? Now you tried the tutorial data, but once you start collecting your own data, it will look somewhat different. And so many more questions that will come up. There's like really no end to that. So the first thing we want to stress is where to go from here when you are on your own. Where can you get some help? And I think the EEG community in general is kind of it's a very welcoming community, and it's kind of on the forefront. There really is a lot of documentation that you can find out there. You have been working with the tutorials that we put up on the field trip website, and it will continue to be available there basically, I think, as long as the website exists. So it will be there for many years to come. So you can always go back and try to revisit it. You can, if you have time and we can get it set up, you can try on your own to complete the tutorials and get an idea about how these signals should look. And you can just follow them on the link you have been following all week, and also put it here in the slide so you can go there quickly. I would also say what we covered in the tutorials is kind of what we think is a very representative way of analyzing data, but there are so many things you can do with EEG data. And the field trip website actually does a good job of trying to give suggestion of different ways of doing things and showing some example code, some tutorials similar to the one you have been doing that shows different ways of doing these things. So if you are in doubt of how to approach a certain analysis, try to look at the field trip website, perhaps find some tutorials that would mimic precisely the type of analysis you would do. And in time, you will also learn how to modify the code you get from the tutorials and apply it to your own data. Field trip website also has a section with videos, where, as we are doing now during this workshop, we have been recording video, and these lectures will, once they are sort of slightly edited, also go up on YouTube and be linked from the field trip website. But you can also find a lot of lectures from previous workshops that mainly Robert have done that covered both similar topics to what we have here, but also some other topics that we haven't covered here. So take a look at what you can find there, what would be interesting to you. I know for many of you here, basically the majority, MATLAB was really a new thing, and well aware that if you're not used to programming, it is difficult to just get into it. We sent this out in the introduction mail, this tutorial, MATLAB for Psychologists, which I really think is a good introduction to the very basics of MATLAB. And I would say it's about 20 pages or so of tutorials that explain what does the different bracket means, how do you add things, how do you assign variables, so with the basics. And I would actually say try this, go through it, you will get a grasp of MATLAB. And actually from there, I think you should be sufficient to actually just use the advanced function that Fieldtrip provide. When you go to the Fieldtrip website, it will look like this. Up in the top, you'll see this documentation. And this is where you can find these both walkthroughs that show some specific example, tutorials, some frequently asked questions, also example scripts, and they are varying from very general to some very specific topics that you can find there. So, they're not. I think we are past this. Yeah. There are also other toolboxes. So Fieldtrip is just like one of many. I personally think Fieldtrip is a very powerful tool that can do a lot of things. But there's also, I think, M&E Python. There's a Python toolbox that can do some of the same things, the same types of analysis. You have EEG Lab that also can do some of the same things, that has a graphical user interface, and Brainstorm and SPM and other of these. And similar to Fieldtrip, they also have websites with examples of how you do that in their software. General, there's also some books and articles that are not just like primary textbook or like primary research articles, but actually are meant for people who are starting out with EEG as a serious researcher. So here I just listed 3 that I think are really good at explaining these things. This one in the middle, I have mentioned a lot of time, the event-related potentials technique by Stephen Locke. Gives a really good and in-depth introduction to how to do event-related potentials, how to interpret the data, how to do the analysis. It doesn't come with like particular code that you can run, but you can read that and then you can easily imagine how to implement this, for example, in Fieldtrip. The MEG EEG primer by Rita Hardy and Einar Pus explains also MEG, but start with the biophysics, and I think it has a really good overview of how MEG and EEG has been used in different research fields, both cognitives and sort of breaking it down in domains. So it's a good inspiration to get an overview of what has done. The top one, Analyzing Neural Time Series Data by Mike Cohen, is a bit more technical. It comes with some MATLAB exercises as well. But it's also a really good, it takes its time to explain everything there. Then I think you can find a lot of online resources, for example, on YouTube. If you just search for either EEG and then maybe event-related potentials or some kind of analysis, EEG and epilepsy, you see either some universities, individual researchers, or just people who are interested actually put some lectures up there as well, where you can find a lot of resources. I haven't really done a curated list here, but I know you also, as I mentioned before, find a lot of Fieldtrip lectures there as well. So yeah, generally there's also a wider community that started out saying that EEG is over 100 years old now, but it's still something that's developing quite a lot. And it really is, I think, a reason EEG is also becoming so popular is that a lot of these tools are available as open science, and there's like a strong open science commitment, which means not only the software, but also in the way we engage with problem solving and so on. I think we already have covered a bit about these different toolboxes. So Fieldtrip you know by now. EEG Lab, that also is a MATLAB toolbox. You have this graphical user interface with some of these plots. M&E, that's for Python. And SPM, that was originally developed for PET and fMRI analysis, but has a a package for analyzing EEG data as well. And Brainstorm, that I haven't used that so much, but also have a really nice graphical user interface, and you can kind of batch build your scripts, the books I mentioned already. Okay, so when you're sitting back at your research instituting and thinking you're on your own, actually I think the good message is that you're actually not alone. Even though you might be the only one in your department, like designing an EEG experiment, there really are a lot of other people out there that are in the exact same situation as you. Like now you kind of have had a week to get to know each other here, and now you know you're actually, many of you, in the kind of same floating in space time. So there's a lot of help to get from other researchers, both who are very experienced, but also who are discovering things. And I think discovering these kind of things together is actually a good way to help each other out. The first thing I say is actually try to engage in this, for example, by signing up to some email lists. So Fieldtrip has its own email list that is quite active. And people use this to ask questions, sort of very specifically. I tried to run this function, frequency analysis, but something didn't work. How should I do that? Why doesn't it work? Might be asked to explain a bit deeper or look at the tutorials first. But if it's something like a new problem, you get some really helpful answers here. You can also just follow it. So maybe someone else is posting to the list with a question that's actually very similar to what you have been thinking about. And then you can follow along and see what other people answer to this. And at one point, you actually might know the answer yourself, and you can write the answer to the person asking. These workshops also, since it's an EEG and MEG electrophysiology specific email list, conferences for EEG or related methods, workshops will also be posted to this mailing list. And I think also important, people who are looking for example, postdocs or PhD students would post the job adverts onto the mailing lists as well. And probably a lot more going on here as well. So the way that you sign up is basically, again, you go to the Fieldtrip website, you click on the support menu in the top, and then you have this site pop up, and then there where the arrow points, there you can click sign up for the email list, and I think you just sign up and put in your information, and then you will be signed up to the email list. So now you signed up to the Fieldtrip email list. Know that all the different other toolboxes also have their own email list that you can, this I think you can find on your own and look it up. But I know the M&E one is quite active. The other tools, I don't really remember. I think the SPM might be more fMRI related, but that might also be relevant for you. But I think this is a good way to also know what's happening out there in the community. Then there are some communities that arrange events. You have the African Brain Data Network. I guess you know them by now. You have been here all week. If not, then, well. There is this association called Cutting EEG that started out as kind of a grassroots initiative among some EEG researchers. And they have then been kind of expanding with different groups, kind of joining this network. And I think once a year or twice a year, they arrange workshops, both in person, but also online, where I think you have to sign up for a short membership fee, but then all their events are free for you as a member. And that's it's kind of open what they do. They have both done sort of more regular conferences with like scientific content. They have done sort of workshops and tutorials, and kind of a mix between these things. They also do mix between sort of where some part of the workshops would be in person and some part would be online. Then there are some more, so we have the links here in, so you can look at these things on your own when you're on your way home or when you get back home. There's the Biomag Association that's generally deal with biomagnetism, a bit more towards MEG, but they also have a mailing list and they arrange events and have some resources as well. There's the Organization for Human Brain Mapping that generally broadly deal with human brain mapping that encompass all kind of imaging modalities, and EEG is also a part of this. And they also have a very engaged and welcoming community. I cannot remember if you can sign up to the mailing list or you need to be a member. So there's a membership fee to sign up to this. But some of the initiatives that have come out of the Human Brain Mapping organization is, for example, this BITS standard that Robert talked about the other day. That's kind of the logic of how to organize data. Resources for how to understand bits and how to format bits on your own data you can find at the BITS standard website. That's kind of have the documentation and also some examples on how to do it. Another thing that's come out of the kind of human brain mapping and some of the EEG initiatives within that is this COBIDAS guidelines, which is a very long document, but it's a document that's meant to kind of facilitate good reporting practices and how you should think about your studies. So when you are both running your experiments and when you are analyzing your data, you will have to do some different steps. And here there are some like step-by-step guidelines to what should you think about here, and when you're writing up a scientific paper, how should you report these things. I think it's quite long, but it has some sections might apply to your study, some might not, but it has some really good overview that kind of put things into perspective. Then there's also this Neurostars forum that I think is also a general neuroscience, neuroimaging forum that you can sign up to, where people are also posting and asking questions. And I don't know if you want to take us. So I think a point is also to be a kind of active member and start your own communities.